Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Accessibility Learning webinar mini-series that we've launched recently that's really focused on remote working and a lot of the tools that you can use to help be successful with that. My name is Sean. I'm an escalation engineer on the Microsoft Enterprise Disability Answer Desk, where we provide support for our enterprise customers around accessibility. Before we start today, I do want to make sure everyone knows that we have captioning available. If you want to view those, you can open a web browser and go to aka.ms/webinar captions.
Thank you, Sean. My name is Crystal Jones. I manage operations for our Disability Answer Desk team. Thank you all for joining us today. Sean and I are both going to moderate the webinar. Before we jump into the topic for today, I do want to acknowledge and talk a little bit about the background and what brought us to today. So it's our mission to lean into your feedback and do what we can to empower all of our customers to achieve more. We had heard feedback from customers really around needing more training to understand how to use Microsoft products. So back in January of 2019, we launched our 12-part webinar series, which was a great success. And I know many of you joined us for that. And we really appreciate all the great feedback we had on that. So much so that when we started hearing more feedback in March, we thought maybe we could do something again. We know most of us worldwide have moved to working remotely since COVID-19. And we've heard from a lot of you that, you really are looking for more training and more guidance on how to work remotely and use Teams. So we decided to launch this Teams mini-series on working remotely. And we really think it'll be a great opportunity for us to share some of the things we've learned, but also to learn from you. So Sean, would you tell us a bit about the topic for today?
Absolutely. So I'll first kind of talk a little bit about the structure for today. So we have about an hour, and the webinar will be split into a few components. We have two speakers today. So first up, we have Hector, and he'll have a segment, and then Megan will also have a segment, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end of that. And so don't worry if you do miss part of today's session or are viewing it or want to view it later. We will record this and make the recording available soon after the event.
Great. That's great. Yeah, as Sean mentioned, your questions are really important to us and getting to engage with you is important. So do know that we'll have an opportunity to engage with Megan and Hector on Twitter at MSFTEnable after this webinar. So please join us there. So without any more delay, let me go ahead and toss it over to our first presenter for today, Hector.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Crystal. I've been watching these webinars ever since you started them, and it's brilliant to finally be on one. My name is Hector Minto. I'm the evangelist for Europe. And essentially, that means that I spend a lot of my time inside customers, working with our partners, working with the community, building up knowledge and awareness of the tools that we have available from Microsoft. Quite often people are not aware of everything that's in there straight out of the box. So this is a great opportunity, especially in the time that we're in right now, to have this conversation. If I just jump to my first slide. We have a blog out at the moment. If you go to aka.ms/accessibility blog, which recognizes that actually the disability community already are very good at workplace flexibility. When this all started to happen, working remotely, us, finding new offices, maybe not being on our standard desktop in the office, the disability community were actually one of some of the first people to kind of go, yeah, we know how to problem solve already. And so the blog really acknowledges that actually workplace flexibility is a skill that many of us need to have. People in the mainstream are really kind of struggling right now to get used to Teams and how to kind of communicate in this different way. Actually, just by engaging with people with disabilities in the workforce, I think you'll find a lot of the answers there. So I'm going to just start off by talking about how we set meetings up for success. I'll just jump back a slide. Some simple rules here just about how to be really more inclusive in the meetings that we're all joining remotely. If I just run across those top three first, encouraging cameras on, going for simple backgrounds, blurred backgrounds, or even some of these simplified effects that we have in Teams now, and also proactively offering captions and translation. If I just play this slide here, people don't really often think about how distracting a lot of noise is on the camera. And so what you'll see here is we'll press the button, the captions come on in Teams automatically for the user. So it's not distracting to everybody else. If you think that you benefit from these captions, you just need to turn them on, and it's a personal view for you. The blurred background really helps people who lip read. And so when you think about if we click that button, you'll see the face becomes really clearly into focus. That simulates that simple background that we're really after to make sure that we're really focusing on the face. I just jump through. The other thing we can, of course, do is offer PowerPoint translation, subtitles. There's a little button in the bottom corner here that I can click on that helps me just offer captions that everybody can see. So when we're proactive about offering captions, what we're saying to people who maybe haven't asked for them or maybe worried about asking for them to be turned on, we're saying that it's all right to ask. And that's a really kind of inclusive behavior that we're all hoping to see people use more and more. What's really fascinating actually is that as people start to trust the accuracy of the AI provided captions, people are much more comfortable about turning them on. The next thing I want to cover is video recordings of meetings. Now, when you want to, you can actually say, I'm not going to attend this meeting. I'm going to catch up on the recording. Every single Teams meeting that's recorded goes directly to Microsoft Stream, just a standard part of Office 365. Now, that meeting, when it goes up there into the cloud, gets auto-transcribed, which means that it's searchable by transcript. You can jump straight to keywords in the meeting. It also means that you can see who's speaking at each point through the blue box that's indicated on the person speaking. So even if people don't turn their cameras on, you can see who's saying those words at that point. I quite often, because I work across these different time zones, I'm often just catching up on meeting recordings after the event. And it's a really good way to do it, especially if you're trying to kind of balance that work and family balance that we're all trying to achieve right now. So the next thing is muting when you're not speaking. Be really conscious of the noise that's around you, and when you're not speaking, avoid distractions for others. So learn how to mute yourself when you're not the one contributing. Super simple to do. Click the mute button. You'll see that in line go across the microphone there. You can also keyboard tab to that option and just hit enter to select. The next thing I want to just wrap up with on this section is asking your colleagues about their requirements, learning about your colleagues. We're all starting to work in different ways. And as we all adjust, why not take that opportunity to proactively ask your colleagues, are we communicating right? Is there anything I can do to make these meetings more successful? Now, that might be things as simple as some of the tips that we've seen here. It might be restricting the chat or really going into the chat a lot more. But when we reach out and ask, you'll quite often see that people will really respond in a great way. Offering those captions, turning cameras on and off, really simple tips. But the most important thing is to ask, super easy to do. Okay, so for the next section, I want to give you some of the things that I use all the time. Often I'm sat in meetings and there's a load of actions that I'm thinking about. And if I've only got one screen in front of me, what do? Well, I use the meeting note. Every single Teams call that you're in, you can have a meeting note section there. You type in the meeting notes, they're shared with everybody else on the meeting. And so at the end of the meeting, you have these clear actions that everyone's going to take. So really learn how to use that feature. Next, snapping windows. It's almost crazy to me that people don't know this is there. Now, you only have so much screen available to you. So snapping windows together and making sure that you're using the most of the screen you've got, really easy to do. All you have to do is drag it over to the left of the screen and it auto snaps. But you can also use keyboard shortcuts, Windows key down to take into a window, and then Windows key left or right to dock it. So maximize the screen that you've got available. You can split your attention between those two apps that are open. Next thing, Multiple desktops. Little known fact, Windows has multiple desktops available. So what I do is I have one for my my work, maybe one desktop for my social, and then one for my private stuff, and then maybe another one for my tasks. Having multiple desktops allows you to hide the noise, really focus on what you're trying to do at that time and compartmentalize your work life. In the next update of Windows, you're even going to be able to rename these. So rather than desktop 1, desktop 2, desktop 3 that you see here, you'll actually be able to give them those names to help you organize your workflow. Okay, next, focus mode. Distraction is such a challenge, especially in these times of remote working. So actually saying to yourself, actually, no, I need to knock this document out in the next 20 minutes, and forcing your device into a priority or an alarms only mode allows you to create that focus space. Really easy to do. You just swipe across on the right hand side on your desktop, choose that option for focus assist, and give yourself the focus that you need. Okay, next, dictation. Lots of people don't know that Windows has full dictation built into it now. Hit your Windows key and H and you will unlock Windows-wide dictation. You've also got it available in OneNote as a standalone. You've got it available in Office as a standalone. But if you're just trying to get words down on paper, hit Windows key H and unlock system-wide dictation. We only have so much energy in the day, and actually typing, reading, spending all that time on screen, sometimes it's just useful to kick back, get your words down on paper, hit Windows H and start dictating. Okay, so to wrap up from me, I just want a quick reminder, there's a full ease of access center in Windows. Windows key U unlocks ease of access center. Today, now is the time for you to have a think about yourself, personalizing the way that you work with your computer. And accessibility is just personalization. Hit Windows key U and go down through vision, hearing, mobility. Have a look at those options and maybe think about features that you haven't seen, that you've never seen before. Try them out and find your best way of working. And so with that, I'm going to hand back to Sean and Crystal in the studio. Thanks so much for your time. I'll see you back in the Q&A later.
Thanks, Hector. Really awesome demos. I think dictation is definitely something I love as well. Sean, what'd you think?
I thought it was great. I really love just kind of seeing a lot of these things in action in real time. So
yeah, definitely. Well, I know we have more lined up, so let's turn it over to our second presenter, Megan Lawrence.
Thanks so much, Crystal and Sean. My name is Megan Lawrence, and I am the Accessibility Evangelist here in the Americas, as well as the co-lead of the employees with mental health conditions here at Microsoft. During COVID-19, I've learned many things about inclusion. And one of them is that we want to belong to something bigger than ourselves, right? Community has become an incredibly important part of all of our daily lives, whether that's the community that we have with our families, extending that out to friends and neighborhoods, and certainly the work communities that we have. And so increasingly, technology is allowing us to have that kind of connection where we can check in on one another, see how we're doing, collaborate on documents, or even come together for those happy hours. Because communication, I think, is key. But you have to remember, people communicate in so many different kinds of ways. So today I want to talk a little bit about how we are communicating and taking care of ourselves. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we recognize that mental health lies on a spectrum. On one hand, everybody has mental health, just like they have physical health, right? And we're all doing tasks to make sure that we stay healthy. Now, the other end of that spectrum, we've got mental health conditions. Now, these are diagnosed conditions like depression, anxiety, an eating disorder, or schizophrenia. And some of you may even identify as having a mental health disability, but you haven't been diagnosed yet. Now, let's be honest with ourselves. This is part of just the way that our world works. Mental health is the #1 disability in the world today. And in fact, 83% of people will have a diagnosed mental health condition at some point in their lives. Now, this may be something that is more temporary short-term, like postpartum depression, or you may be like me, who I have an anxiety disorder and fibromyalgia. But we do recognize that when we are not thoughtful about taking care of ourselves, about building that culture of inclusion within our organizations, that can lead to lost productivity. And in fact, about 35% of global lost output is due to poor mental health. Now, it's not just people not being in the workplace, but in fact, most lost productivity happens, about 80%, when people have presenteeism. And I'm sure you've all had this experience of coming to work, being online, being ready to work, but not having that mental and intellectual capacity to be at your very, very best. But this isn't new, of course, right? This has been happening in the workplace for a very, very, very long time. People have permanent anxiety disorders or different types of mental health conditions. Many of us may have experienced more temporary instances. For example, taking care of a sick family member, and certainly during COVID, really balancing, trying to educate kids that are now home from school, making sure that you're on top of your work and being a great spouse or partner to the people around you. And this also happens in a situational capacity, right? You've got that huge deadline, you're not sleeping well, and you really feel that stress starting to creep in. And even though I think we would all agree that in order to recharge, we have to disconnect, man, it is incredibly difficult. I recently learned, in fact, that about 70% of professionals never fully unplug from work, and 87% of us are reading emails after hours. Hector shared with me this last statistics, which kind of blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. 30% of us are reading emails before we even get out of bed. And so here today, I really want to talk about how we intentionally begin to get a work-life balance, to set the kinds of boundaries that are going to make us not only successful in the short term, but really focusing on that whole employee for the long term and thinking about the role that technology has to play. Because we know it's a dual, right? It's a dual role. On one hand, I do want to recognize that technology just has this ever presence in our lives, both personal and professional, and that can cause symptoms of mental health conditions. And for those of us who have mental health diagnosed conditions, those effects can be much, much worse when we are always expected to be on, always expected to be connected. And so that's really the rise of what I call digital well-being, because I believe that technology has a positive role to play. And I like to think of apps as apps for wellness advocates. So let's look at a little bit of the Microsoft technology that can help you set yourself up for success. The first one I want to talk about is My Analytics. So again, you have to unplug to recharge. You have to put the device down. I know this is challenging. Trust me, I'm one of those people. In fact, I don't know if my husband has trained my small dog, but my little Chiweenie now will literally bump the phone out of my hand when he feels like it's time for him to be getting more attention in those evening hours. And so this is an absolutely true story. My husband asked me, God, I think it was last week, right? He said, your work-life hours are off. It feels like you're just working more and more. And I find it just so easy to roll right out of bed and onto the computer. And before I know it, I've done a 10 or a 12-hour day with very, very little breaks. And so as he brought this to my attention, my reaction was honestly to start crying, because I said to him, I know, but I have to show the value that I bring to my team. And I had gotten confused between really focusing and having great impact through my work versus just always being on and feeling like I have to constantly be running at 100% in order to show value. And so I made that commitment not only to my family, but also to my colleagues to take Friday nights and Saturdays off to really focus on myself and be well. And My Analytics gives you a purple little square every time you successfully don't get back online after hours. It's a way that I keep myself honest. And now I've shared that work-life balance strategy with my manager. And so my manager will send me a ping that says, hey, Megan, get a purple square today, which means you're doing a great job. I care about you. Get the downtime that you need. Now, in order to really unplug and feel good about that, right, We've got to get done what we want during the day. And I liked that Hector talked about really keeping things more focused and bringing that noise down, right? So my analytics will have a little nudge or a little note that pops up that says, hey, it looks like your calendar's starting to get full. Can I go ahead and block focus time for you, which is 2 hours of focus time? Why is 2 hours important? It takes 23 minutes on average to refocus after just being interrupted by one email notification or one chat notification, right? So think really hard about those moments when you want to say, I'm turning off my notifications because I want to focus and get the work done so I feel good about getting the downtime I need. This is also how we are mindful of others. This, I think, is probably one of my favorite features, which is in Outlook. If you are emailing after hours, it gives you a little notification that says, hey, did you know you're sending this after hours? Because my analytics has shown that when your manager or your management chain sends you an email, you tend to get back online and answer that, and then spend 90 additional minutes doing I don't even know what, right? So again, we want to be thoughtful about being about the way that we communicate with our colleagues after hours. This is really especially important for managers. If it's important, send that email. If it can wait, wait. If you love to email all night long because that's your preferred style, click the little button in my analytics well-being that says, just hold this and let this hit inboxes in the morning. Now, I can tell you personally, I went, an evangelist, a very public-facing role, and this would be the time when Hector and I are at conferences and meeting with all of our customers, and right now that can't happen. And so I had to take a little bit of a shift. I had to learn how to be a virtual evangelist, and at first that was really, really stressful. And so I had a great conversation with my manager around how can we be flexible about those priorities, right? Not running 100 miles an hour all the time, focusing on the right thing, getting simplicity and a lot of clarity. So again, if you're a manager, think about how you're providing that clarity for people so that they feel really good about the work that they're doing and the focus that they have. Now, earlier this month, I talked to Mental Health America, which is a nonprofit focused specifically on mental health and well-being. And you probably won't be surprised to hear that on the top of their list of trends, isolation was a very, very big concern for them. And so this is a moment where something like Teams is a great way for us to be checking in with one another. I love that idea of turning on cameras, especially as a person with anxiety. I like being able to see people's facial expressions. I like to see that they're paying attention to me. But it can also be kind of exhausting to have that camera on all day long, right? So I've actually set up a couple of rules for myself, which might be helpful for you. If it's somebody new or a customer that I don't regularly meet with, I always start with my camera on so we can make that connection. If it's somebody that I meet with regularly, like Hector, I just say, hey man, can we have a meeting without that camera on? It just reduces a little bit more of that stress for me. But perhaps most importantly, I talk about it, right? I let people know where I'm at and what I need. And everybody really respects the openness and communication. Now, camera and that kind of all meeting together for that digital happy hour may not work for everybody. So if you have a colleague that you see is not showing up regularly, that's a great time to reach out and check in. And you may just find out that they needed their own downtime during that happy hour. And so they were intentionally taking care of themselves in a different way. One of my favorite stories that I've heard from one of my colleagues recently is, man, COVID has been interesting because I'm having mental health symptoms that really I've never had before, and I don't know how to talk about it. He said, but interestingly enough, I like having the Teams chat. So now my team just has a team chat where we go to have our breaks, where I can put in memes, I can put in videos, I can put in pictures, because I have a better time expressing myself by using things like emojis during this current time. So even though I know all of you are excited to be connecting, be thoughtful about connecting and communicating in different ways that may be helpful depending on people's disabilities. Now, if there's one thing that I hope you take away from this presentation, not one thing, there's too many good things to take away from this presentation, but one thing as it comes down to Mental Health Awareness Month is that we all have to take the time to take care of ourselves. And so block time for self-care, right? Just do the easy thing of putting a little bit of time on your calendar to do the things that bring you joy, to get up for a stretch, to make sure that you've got that water next to you. This doesn't have to be an hour. You don't have to go out and run a marathon every morning. This could be 15 minutes where you just check in with yourself and allow a little bit of downtime. Now, many of you have probably heard about the Xbox Adaptive Controller. This was a new piece of hardware that we developed a few years ago so that you could completely customize your gaming experience, especially helpful for people who had limited reach or strength. And that was cool. But my favorite part is actually the box. So once we made this piece of hardware, we then had to figure out how to put it in a box that you could open very, very simply with one hand. And so our packaging team really leaned into inclusive design and fundamentally changed the way that we had done something forever, which is putting devices in boxes, right? And it began to win awards on its own. And everybody thought, yes, I don't want to fight the clamshell anymore. I want it to be easy to get into that new piece of technology that I'm so eager for. So here today, as we close out the presentation, this is my challenge to you. What is your box moment? How are you going to lean in to inclusion, accessibility, and work from home during May, the Mental Health Awareness Month, to really rethink the way that we build strong work from home cultures of inclusion, whether that's something brand new that we've never thought of before or reinventing the way we've done something forever. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Crystal and Sean in the studio and see if we've got some questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Megan. I think this is super valuable for folks to have resources for taking better care of themselves and their colleagues. So with that, it is now time for us to switch to Q&A for some of the questions that have been really the questions that we've been getting a lot of lately. So we will have a discussion on Twitter with Megan and Hector. You can learn more about that on Twitter at MSFTEnable. Crystal, do you want to tee us up with the first question for today?
Yeah, and this question, I think I'd like to ask to Megan first. You know, I think throughout the presentation, we talked about ways of connecting. And as somebody who's blind, I don't always feel comfortable turning on the camera in a meeting. And I'm wondering if you have tips for kind of how maybe I could work around that. Are there other ways to connect with folks? Or just some things I could do to make sure that I'm able to connect with my colleagues as well.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Crystal. I think so many people right now have camera fatigue. It's really great to have the camera on to feel connected, but it also can take a little bit of a toll on us intellectually and emotionally. And so, you know, I personally think the chat is a really, really great place to continue to connect with people without necessarily having to have that camera on all the time. So, you know, as you said just a little bit earlier, I set some rules for myself, right? Cameras on with customers and new friends and colleagues. Camera off when I'm meeting with people that I know and trust and have met with many, many other times, and then always communicating what I need. But I personally have become a huge fan of the chat. Probably more so now than I ever have been.
Oh, thank you. No, that's great to know there's other options. And I really like the idea of maybe prioritizing when to use and when not to use it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Sean, do you have a question?
I do, and this one I'll toss over to Hector. I think one of the questions we get a lot is, as you both have talked about a lot of the features that are available, where can folks go to learn about a lot of the accessibility features that we have?
Yeah, so we have a sway that we keep updated all the time. I mean, one of the challenges for us is keeping people updated on accessibility features across everything that we do, you know, from Xbox through to Windows, through to Office, even through to the apps that we create in MSR, in Microsoft Research. So always go to aka.ms/ac features or accessibility features. That's where you can find a menu screen there. pick their disability type, essentially. They're categorized into disabilities, and you'll see long laundry lists there of all the sorts of things that you might want to be thinking about to personalize your experience.
Awesome. Thanks, Hector. Crystal, do you have another question?
I do. I have another one for Megan. So I think similar to what we've done today, I think a lot of people are really looking for guidance on how to hold inclusive events. Do you have a checklist or anything that you're using, Megan?
Oh my gosh. Like every event has now turned digital, has it not? And now everyone is going, oh my, how do we do this? One, how do we have great, digital events? And then I think then we go, oh man, we really have to have a great accessible event. And hopefully those two things are happening simultaneously. So Jessica Rafuse, who is one of our colleagues on this particular accessibility team, wrote a really, really great blog about that. So I encourage everybody to visit our blog site. That's aka.ms/accessibilityblogs. It's got some really great information, but specifically around the events. But I also want to draw your attention to another sway that we have that specifically deep dives into how to have an accessible event. And so again, that link is aka.ms/accessible events. And that does have a checklist on there so that you can get very thoughtful and methodical about what you've done, how you need to move forward, and how you set expectations and responsibilities across the team.
Oh, excellent. And if anybody missed either one of those links, we are going to refresh and go through those resources at the end. Definitely the blogs link is a great one. So thank you, Megan. Sean, you're up.
Awesome. Thanks, Crystal. Now, this next question that we have, I know a lot of folks are really eager to try out some of the features that we have available. Hector, maybe you can comment on this, but I think some folks maybe see some features at different times and in different environments.
That's right. What's great nowadays is people are coming to us all the time saying they need these accessibility features. But one thing we want to do is make sure that the whole tech industry is coming with us. So I would always advise people to engage with either their account manager or the partner that they're dealing with, the supplier of their Microsoft technology. If you go and ask them for accessibility features, what you're doing is you're saying to them, these things are needed. We're all using these. And what we're seeing then is that our partners across the world are really buying into the accessibility journey, and they're learning more and will help you get that deployment that you need. I mean, some of the features that we see that really help with accessibility, they're using cloud connectivity, they're using AI. So you do need to switch some of these things on. My biggest bit of advice to anybody out there who wants these features is to go and have your conversation with your supplier. Now, you can always check for updates, of course. So, hit your check update button, make sure that you're constantly kind of keeping up to date, especially if you're not using these tools in the workplace. Always check for updates, always make sure that you're keeping in touch with that sway again, the AC feature sway. See what's available. We give versions, actually. We also give the version numbers in the sway, so you know when you should be expecting to see it. But just to summarize, engage with your supplier. That's normally the best thing.
Awesome. Thanks, Hector. I think that'll be really useful context for everyone listening. Crystal, do you have another question?
Yeah, I think we've got a few more questions here. I have another one for Megan. This one's around understanding what we're doing to share out features for mental health. Like, where can I point people?
Yeah. One of the trends that we're seeing, especially during this time of COVID-19 and work from home, is an increase in mental health and well-being. Not only concerns for how we help take care of people with mental health and well-being, but a real engagement in the conversation and a real ownership around how we can all be building new behaviors. And so actually a team that works with Hector frequently from the UK put together this brilliant sway that walks through all of the different technology. Of course, I've only gotten to hit on a very small percentage of many of the technology tips that we have for mental health. And so that link is aka.ms/tech-wellbeing. I know we've given you all of these different links, but hopefully what that demonstrates is that we've got a lot of great resources that can help back you up, help you learn, and you can share with others to make sure that we're really creating those work from home cultures of inclusion that support each and every person in your organization.
No, that's great. And just a reminder for folks watching live today, once we post a recording, we'll make sure that we include any links in addition to any that we mentioned here on the end of the slide. We can always throw that in with the recording. So to close us out, Sean, I think you have one more question for both Megan and Hector that you want to ask.
I do, yeah. So in this age of all these different tools that folks are using regularly, there are often lots of notifications and things that you might get from those applications. I'd love if you two could share any tips on how you manage that. Megan, I can start with you on that one.
Oh, okay. So it's funny because Hector and I were just talking about this. So Notification Center, if you go to the Windows search bar and type in notifications, you will actually get a really nice list of how you can control the types of notifications that you're getting by application. And I think that's really important, including breakthrough. So for example, Jenny Lee Fleury, who's my manager, she gets the breakthrough. So if she's looking to find me, that one can make it onto my desktop, even when other people I might ask, I might quiet those notifications down. But Teams, what do you do specifically in Teams, Hector?
Yeah, so one of the things that I find a real challenge is even when I've left a meeting early, the notifications in the chat keep on coming. So people should really be aware that there's a really nice mute feature on channels in Teams. So any of your chats, you can right-click on it, choose the mute option, and you're just forcing yourself, to really leave that meeting. So yeah, mute all channels that you're really not active in. So one other quick thing, you can also pin the chats that are also really important to you. So one of the things that I'm finding, especially in this remote working, is that people are setting up teams every day for me to join. So knowing that you can prioritize people, prioritize teams on your list, but also prioritize people in your chat, pin people in your chat so that they're top of your list. That's another top tip. That's something I'm using all the time now.
Awesome, thanks. And I hope folks will really learn from the best practices and tips you've both shared on that. Crystal, do you want to go ahead and start wrapping us up for the day?
Yeah. First, I really want to thank Megan and Hector for joining us. This is just amazing content. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us and share with all of our customers out there who are also using these tools just like we are. So I think it's great to have that opportunity to learn. And we look forward to talking to you in a bit on Twitter. So thank you. So before I toss it back to Sean to run through all those great resources that we have shared throughout the webinar, I do want to just take a moment and let all of you know how important your feedback is to us and how much I would really appreciate, our team would appreciate, if you could take a few moments to just let us know what you thought about today's webinar and really give us some feedback. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The link for that is aka.ms/webinar, WEBINAR, feedback, FEEDBACK. So really huge, really important to hear from you. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to let Sean close us out with a run through of those resources in case you didn't get a chance to take those down when we first mentioned them.
Great, thanks, Crystal. So yeah, I just want to mention some of the resources that we do have. So if you need support with any of our products, the Disability Answer Desk is the place to go. The link to that is aka.ms/DAD. We really value your feedback both on webinars and our products. And if there's any topics you'd love to see covered in webinars, we'd love to hear about that at aka.ms/accessibility-feedback. We're always available on Twitter as well. Just reach out to @MSFTEnable. And so I always love sharing this next resource is the Office Accessibility Center. It's a really good all-up resource of all things Office and accessibility. I'd also like to point to our accessibility blog that Megan had mentioned a little bit earlier. Microsoft.com/accessibility is a great place to start for that and a lot of the other resources. To view any of our other webinars and recordings and all that, aka.ms/accessibility webinars is the best bet there. Megan had also talked about some resources for mental health and well-being. I'd just like to say that one again. It's aka.ms/tech well-being. And with that, I would just like to close us out for the day. And I'd like to acknowledge everyone and just thank you all for tuning in and listening. And I really hope this was valuable. So we'll catch you next time.